Hey y'all, Rowan here. You might be able to hear the insane smirk in my voice right now. That's because I am so excited about what I'm going to be sharing with y'all today. So, a couple of months ago, I started really working in earnest on an art project that had been kind of percolating in the back of my mind for quite some time. Excuse me, one moment. Speaking of percolating, so I began actually doing the artistic work on an oracle / art deck that I had been thinking of planning, writing ideas for loosely for several months at that point. I had not been working on it hard, but then something kicked in. I got the inspiration and I started like really throwing my ass in gear, right? So I finally finished making all 50 cards. I had originally only intended to make 40, but I ended up with more ideas than cards, and so I just kept going. I made these on 100% cotton paper, watercolor paper, and I used watercolor, acrylic, collage, and various inks, mostly glitter gel inks, honestly, to create this deck. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the original artwork. Oh, goodness me. Maybe that'll help a little bit. This deck is a multimedia collage of concepts and methodologies. Some of these ideas are really slapped together. Some of them come together naturally. Some of the images come together naturally. Others were more forced. I had originally 40 pieces of paper to work with, and when I ended up with 50 ideas, I just kept working on the backs. So some of these cards, 10 of them exactly, have front and backs rather than just one or the other. I guess one is the other. But the long and short of it was that I could not physically use this deck. So even when it was done, there was no way that I could actually partake in it. And this was different from one of my other projects. This is not my first Oracle deck, but this is the first one that I've ever considered sharing. This one's actually good, let me put it that way. The first one I made was a trial run, quite frankly. It was just me seeing if I could finish something. Let me protect this more. This deck is unusable in its current state. It has not been sealed either, which is a thing that I need to get on, but I just have been avoiding it because I live in an apartment and the only sealant I have right now is an aerosol, and so I have been avoiding that difficult task because I don't have very much outside space, so it takes a very long time to do that. Anyways, long and short of it was I made the deck on Make playing cards so that I would have a physical copy of it. I really wanted to have a large copy that's in the same size as the original. So this is 3.5 by 5 inches, which is the exact size of the cards that I originally made the deck on. And then this is poker size, whatever that is, like 3.75 by 2.5 or something like that. I don't know. This is the actual final finished product. This is a personal copy only, so this is not something I'm going to make available for the public because I don't think that it looks finished this way. It needs borders, it needs edging, it's incomplete in this larger version. I might someday release a larger version, but it's going to be expensive, and to keep prices down, I kept the size down. So this is what I'm going to be offering to the people who want it once I figure out how to do that, which is just a matter of me spending more time on the Make Playing Cards website, making sense of their instructions on selling and things of that nature. So this deck is 52 cards. 50 of them are oracle cards. One of them is an art card. These are the backs. It is copper gilded. And let's look at the bonus cards first. So we get this art card, which is also the art that's on the box that it comes with. And then we also get, whoop, this is upside down. We get here, basically the summary of the deck, of my thinking with the deck, of the intention with what I have made here. Connecting two ideas grants an outcome greater than the sum of the parts. By tying concepts together and delving between them, we are able to find meaning in the revealed patterns in the overlap. We move through these throughout life, and each time we revisit them, we are fascinated. Excuse me. I am so dyslexic. This font was a choice. Let me be honest about that. Connecting to ideas grants an outcome greater than the sum of the parts. By tying concepts together and delving between them, we are able to find meaning in the revealed patterns in the overlap. We move through these throughout life, and each time we revisit them, we are faced with how our understanding has changed, much like ourselves. This is what it means to mix your metaphors, your media. It means moving through the spiral cycles of life with your eyes open to all the places we come in contact with the great expanse of other. So even though I can't read it, I swear to God, I wrote that. Inseminate, Contaminate is where the deck begins. It does have a specific order. It comes in the intended order, and the guidebook, when I eventually get around to writing it, will be in this order as well. The deck is not going to be available for sale until the guidebook is complete, and I don't know how long that's going to take me, but I'm just so excited about having my own copy that I need to show you all so that I can start using it and not be so precious with it. So this is 50 oracle cards or art cards, however you want to view and use it, and it begins with the insemination or the contamination of the purity of the self with the true concept of other. This is something that happens when we are very young and we first recognize the fact that other people view us separately from how we understand ourselves to exist. This can also refer to the Big Bang. This can refer to the moment of conception. This can refer to a lot of germinating, seminal events. So this is not exclusively about what I have described, but in the context of the story the deck tells, that's where we begin. So keep in mind that even with the way I described this, you are intended to be able to experience these cards on your own terms. You do not have to work with the guidebook as with any oracle deck. It's just going to be there for you as support in case you need messages outside of yourself, because we're not always able to really tune in with our whole beings and intuitions and whatnot. Sometimes we need somebody else to guide us through, you know? So we move on then to safe/content or more. So not all the cards have additional keywords. Some of them do. I'm sorry for the discrepancy. This card is about the ways in which we allow ourselves to remain overly protected in the name of, or I guess this is about how we allow ourselves to be somewhat detached in the name of safety. That's truly what it comes down to, is being detached in the name of protecting yourself. And the ultimate question is, are you happy or are you complacent? Which is a line from a play that I was in when I was in high school. Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind. It was from one of the skits. Cloud Fog. This is, so we're still early on in the deck, so keep in mind that this is the sort of morning cloud fog. This is early in life. This is finding beauty in the unknown and the unperceivable. This is finding beauty in ignorance kind of thing. that's the energy we've got there. Sunrise, sunset is meant to indicate both the start and end to a cycle or phase in a cycle. It's meant to highlight the ways in which the beginnings and ends of things mirror each other, though they have their own unique qualities at any given example. Park bench coastline is all about liminal spaces and the coming together of separate elements to create a unique experience therein. This is about a card about the perception of the world from our unique location within it as well. The way you view an ocean while sitting on the bench is inherently different than the way you would view the ocean from being within the ocean. So park bench coastline. Wind wave is what you see when you're at the coastline. You finally start to understand that the movement of one affects the other, that the wind and the waves are united in their flow, and that they are in many ways the same as one another. This is a card all about the butterfly effect and about realizing for the first time that your actions have consequences outside of yourself. Black and white is the result of that sort of thinking when you are young. There's good, there's bad, and there's nothing in between. Are you being fair? Are you being honest? Are you acknowledging the areas of gray, or are you finding yourself locked into black and white thinking? Potential energy icicle. So now we've got the final impetus for movement forward. We're at a position where our setting can be anything. Our what we derive from it can be anything. Like our title card really could be anything. But the icicle is melting, the drop will fall, and a puddle will form. Something must be done with that potential energy. Risk adrenaline. This is the outcome of early emanations of that potential energy. You try things for the first time, plate spinning perhaps, and you don't do a particularly good job of it, but you need to allow yourself space to make failures, or to make failure. That's one way to put it, I guess. You need to give yourself room to be bad at something in order to improve at it. Risk and adrenaline go hand in hand. Sometimes it contributes to a gambler's attitude, and that always is the shadow side of this card. So making sure that you're pursuing risk appropriately instead of getting high on the adrenaline of it. And this is a tipping point for how you can proceed. So it's very easy to get caught up on the adrenaline that comes from risk instead of moving along through the rest of the cards. So ideally, you realize that your actions have consequences outside of yourself, and you learn to start taking risks with how you impact the world around you. Ideally, at this point, you learn the value of connecting with another person. And so this card is all about the bumbling ways in which we first connect with someone. This hand here is reaching for something that it's not touching while this mouth tries to lick it, indicating that the two parties represented here are not after the same thing, but they're both trying to obtain it through connection, and they will connect with each other. And this may not be perhaps the ideal outcome, but it is the first time that true interpersonal or perhaps interbeing of other sorts, such as like truly connecting to an art form that you love and that brings you true passion in life, things like that. But it's that first spark. Trapped and Stalled. This card has the subtitle of Seized up here. This is an engine with a check engine light behind it, shown held behind bars with a very ornate lock. Trapped Stalled is about the ways in which we allow ourselves to be kept prisoner by our own mistakes, or by simply not recognizing the true power that we have in a situation and refusing to step into it. That doesn't mean that every time you are trapped or stalled, it is your fault. That doesn't mean that you can always avoid it, but it does mean that often in these times, all you can do is walk away from the situation, learning a lesson that may or may not be applicable in the future, but you got to learn something, right? That's kind of the energy here, I guess. Reminds me of the first vehicle I ever had. In the span of one day, the check engine light came on and then the engine seized because there was a hole in my oil line, I guess, and there was a leak in my oil that I didn't know about, and because I didn't immediately address the problem, that car had to be basically chucked in the trash can because it just wasn't worth replacing the entire engine. And that's the story behind this card. Library training ground. You can't really see the L in library, and I do think that this card is probably going to make some people uncomfortable. I did not intend for that when I made it. I was not thinking clearly about the cross implications of certain American experiences in the past 20 plus years. For that, I am sorry. This was never intended to be about children in that sort of way. It wasn't meant to be about school violence. This was always meant to be about learning valuable skills to defend yourself and enact your own will through the spread of information from others. This is about how learning when you are young shapes who you become in the future. Unfortunately, it was kind of made in bad taste because I was not thinking this through. As an American, I should have known better. I'm not going to pull the card because I thoroughly enjoy my original intention behind it, and I don't think I'm that original making this comparison. I just think that I have baggage with it, I guess, and so do a lot of people at this time. Typewriter Golgi. This one is again about communication, and it bounces off of some of the ideas that were meant to be established in library training ground, where now you have the ability to, you're learning from others rather how to communicate your needs. So the Golgi apparatus helps package up bits of cell stuff that aid in communication from one cell to the other. It helps the cell to understand the needs of other cells, as well as helps the cell to communicate its own needs. In a similar way, typewriters have assisted humans in facilitating communication one with another across great distances and without having to read someone's handwriting. So that was kind of my line of thinking in connecting these two ideas. Collage Collaborate. This card takes the Three of Pentacles and reimagines it as a less than stellar coming together of minds that perhaps doesn't result in a great accomplishment, but rather, even in all the chaos, something good comes of it anyways. So Collage Collaborate, this card, in the story that the cards tell, does not always have a good outcome to it. So this card speaks to, like, perhaps being in a collaborative situation and having too much ego in it. Like, it's specifically about needing to humble yourself. However, if you get different readings, that's fine. It's just in the line of this, in the story that the order of the cards tell, that's what it means. Because the next card, Put a Lid on It, Bottle It Up, is about the ways in which we suppress parts of ourselves to be more palatable to those around us through the lessons that life teaches us. So-and-so doesn't like this. Yada yada is inappropriate in XYZ setting. That's what this card speaks to. And then you have a more refined way of interacting with the people around you, but it's also perhaps a little bit put on. It's so Prayer Socialization is a card about right here we've got Matthew 6:9-13, which references the Lord's Prayer. This card is kind of about polite society, about performative interactions that should be meaningful but aren't. So specifically, I quoted the Lord's, or I referenced the Lord's Prayer here because when I was a child, I was raised in a Christian cult, and my father had the very strong belief that every prayer had to be off the cuff. It had to be in the moment. Reciting a memorized prayer was a way of cheapening your communication with God. And the flip side of that is that having rote social interactions still fills that need. Having rote prayers allows us to get into ritual mindset. It allows us to have a pattern that we can trust and depend on. So that's the flip side of it, is that these things, as I've gotten into adulthood, these things are different than they were when I was a child in the situation that I was in then. And this card speaks to both aspects of that, I guess. That's I think the best way I can put that. Tell a story, pass the time. This card is about folk tales. It's about myth and legend. This card is about even just the small myths and legends that we keep for our loved ones, about interactions that we had. That time Joey caught a fish and it was so-and-so inches long, but then next time you tell it, it was so-and-so inches plus one, that sort of thing. But it's also about the morals we derive from retelling these stories. It's about the way we derive entertainment from tapping into these collective memories. Tell a story, pass the time is meant to speak to all of those things. Yellow violet. To me personally, and you don't have to read the card this way, but to me personally, this card speaks to celebration because I associate yellow and violet, the combination, with royalty and with Mardi Gras. Like, those are the biggest associations I have. So yellow and violet together to me speaks to opulence and celebration. Clover kudzu. This card is about infiltration, infection, about weeds, but also about knowing the difference between something that is truly parasitic and something that is beneficial to other beings besides yourself. So clover kudzu, you've got the contrast between the kudzu, which will grow wherever and overtake an environment until it is nothing but kudzu, and the clover, which seems like an invasive species, but oftentimes simply just wants to give a home to bees and other pollinators. Then we get on to grief change. This is the response to the infiltration. You get to a point in your life where you have to cope with the fact that it will guaranteed not look like it used to, and the emotions and processes that come with that realization. Haunted Company is one of my favorite cards in the deck. This card takes an excerpt from the opening pages, or takes two excerpts from the opening pages of A Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. And cuts out some of the words to slightly twist but also distill the original message to get across the meaning of this card. Haunted Company is what happens when you allow yourself to not be honest about needing other people, and when you allow yourself to be consumed by the assumption that other people don't need you. This card is about Eleanor, the main character of this book. She suffers from chronic self-hatred and delusions of the hatred of others as well, and it quite literally drives her to death. And I wanted to reference that sort of energy, and that's haunted is what happens. Haunted by company is what happens when you don't allow yourself to feel the love that others are trying to give you, amongst other things. Shaken Stirred is about having a point in your life where ultimately it's going to turn out similarly enough either way, but the way in which you get there is going to be violent one way or the other. You just have to pick your poison. That's kind of the vibe of this card. It says you're going to be the olive in this martini glass, or do you want to be shaken or stirred? It's going to get hectic, and ultimately there's going to be a martini, but you get the choice, shaken or stirred. Orange blue. This one I don't want to say too much about. It's the reflection of the sky on the ocean and the reflection of the ocean on the sky. Yep. Trace the call, unknown caller. What is the source of your problem? What is the true source of it? Get to that before you can move forward. Trace the call, unknown caller says you are not being real with yourself and you need to. Found family, spiritual ancestor. This is a card that's all about the people that you truly, genuinely love in your life, and how we have to go through a process to figure out who those people are. It's not always obvious right off the bat. Sometimes people you think are good for you are just a drain, or they're not good or bad. Sometimes you put a lot of hope in someone who ends up not being much to you at all. And Found family, spiritual ancestor is a card about how we need to lean on those who truly share our best intentions and our experiences, because they are truly the people who will hold us up. Fairy tales, imagination. This is about the necessity of play, truly. About the ways in which we can develop and grow if we give ourselves space to play. Telegraph internet is about Okay, this card's kind of about the folly of man in thinking that making the internet is the only way that we the planet can be a macroorganism, I guess. It is intended to speak to that macroorganism energy, because it, like this wire here is intended to look like a hand reaching, mirroring some of the other cards we've had so far. This is the third one. I don't think I do it again. I'm pretty sure it's just those 3 instances in the deck. Roll of 3, guys. But this card is meant to sort of speak to that artificial but still meaningful connection that humankind has made through their own abstraction of data as a placeholder for emotion, I guess, is how I want to finish that sentence. Telegraph internet. The flip side of that, cellular cosmic, is that we are all connected even without the artificial input of mankind. Cellular cosmic speaks to the ways in which the as above mirrors the so below. That's really the ultimate energy of this card. This is all about, you are a galaxy, you are a universe, and within you there is an immeasurable amount of life that depends on you, and that is a beautiful thing. And then we get above beyond, which is very straightforward. We have an impossible fraction here, 1 over infinity, but also it is not exclusively a mathematical equation. It is also a representation of priority, 1 over infinity, above beyond. And so this above beyond sort of represents a moment of clarity that we then extrapolate from. Acorn oak, the natural growth cycle of the world around you, finally recognizing the cyclical nature and the way trauma is an inherent part of growing up, and that it is a beautiful thing. The nut must be cracked open to grow the tree. Sand quartz, this sort of builds off that same idea, where we've got 2 things, one of which is considered beautiful, the other one is considered rough, and it gets everywhere. And the ways in which our environment shapes who we are as perceived by other people. And then finally, religion, philosophy, truth quest, the pursuit of understanding of the questions that cannot be mundanely answered. And then we get cull, keep. Which of these are you going to get rid of? Now that you've seen the similarities and the differences between all of these different things, which of these are worth keeping and which of these do you need to purge from your life? So Satiate. This card speaks to the ways in which it is necessary to relax. It is necessary to depend, not just relax, but also, so Soma, I've used birth control here, and Soma is specifically, like, it's a word that's used in a lot of ways, but specifically in this card, it's a reference to Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, which is one of my least favorite books ever written. I don't want to go into that diatribe here. That little detour does not need to be made today, but this card references the Soma in that way as a birth control pill that, or not just I don't think the Soma is the birth control pill, but it's associated with the birth control pills, and the sating of the appetite for sex, while, like, indulging. This card's about indulging. This card is about indulging without consequences. This card doesn't necessarily say that indulging is a bad thing, because the question is, are you overindulging, or is this a necessary indulgence? And that's really what this card is here to pose. Don't let my ramblings confuse you. It is not an inherently negative card. It is about it might be triggering for some people, it occurs to me. So, like, again, if this deck is not for you, it's not for you. I get it. Like, I think I have friends who probably wouldn't be able to face this card if it came up in a reading. And that's interesting to me, because as somebody who deals with certain things that I think this card might be triggering for, this was a very necessary piece of art for me to make. So I totally get it now that I think about it, if you can't do this one. Vice Virtue. This one is all about the fact that sometimes you're going to do things that you think are the right thing and other people don't. Sometimes you're going to get in a position where you are being held accountable for actions that you thought you had every right to make, and now you have to face those consequences. How are you going to face them? Frustration, anxiety shows the annoyance at being in such an unfair position of feeling like, I mean, not even necessarily that in the story, yes, that, but like if you pull this card, that doesn't have to be what it means. Just in the story, frustration, anxiety, this card is all about how when I was a kid and I would read the Ramona Flowers books, I would get so frustrated because Ramona's parents never treated her fairly, in my opinion, and her big sister always got it better, and my annoyance at the fact that Ramona always seems to get the short end of the stick, etc., etc. So that feeling of reading those books and being frustrated at the injustice of it all, that is, like, when I think of frustration, that's where my mind goes, followed by trying to mop the floor and the mop hitting the wall, like the stick of the mop hitting the wall behind you while you try to mop. That drives me crazy. Or worse, when it happens while you're sweeping and the broom accidentally knocks the dust everywhere. Ooh! So that's the frustration energy that's meant to be portrayed here. Obviously, like, you know, there's layers to this stuff. There's different intensities. Wooden spoon, metal knife is about the ways in which we harm each other with items that are not always intended for harm. This is about bringing a metal spoon, or about bringing a wooden spoon to a knife fight. This is about interpersonal violence among, first and foremost. It doesn't have to be literal, but that's what this card speaks to. In what ways is there conflict between you and another person? Don't just look for the knives, look for the wooden spoons too. Bleed cry. I mean, this one seems pretty straightforward. I don't know if I have to explain this, but this is about the ways we signal with our bodies without our permission necessarily. We signal our needs through fluid loss. So you bleed when you're hurt, you cry when you're hurt. I feel like explaining this makes it sound a lot stupider than not explaining it, and so I'm just going to move on. Ransom Letter, Kill Your Darling is about reassessing the things that you think that you love and deciding if they are actually worth being held hostage over, and deciding whether or not the aspects of your life that you have created for yourself, such as writing a character in a novel, do you need to kill your darling? Is it actually serving you? And Ransom Letter, that half of it, again, refers to like this idea: what are you willing to pay? What are you willing to dole out to ensure the safety of whatever it is that may or may not be serving you? Introspection, Apotheosis. This card speaks to, the energy here is when you are in the shower, or as this card demonstrates, washing your hands. When you are in the ritual act of cleaning yourself, you have the moment to introspect on how you have accumulated this dirt and grime. And from that, there is a possibility to rise to a higher state. So this card, even more so than... oh, it's some ways back. Even more so than our Above Beyond card is that moment of finally getting it and of making sense of your personal purpose in the life that you lead. Seatbelt PPE is about protecting yourself when you do hazardous things, and about how the journey ahead of you, to make true meaningful stuff, you have to hold on. Sorry about that. Husband just left and I had to go kiss him goodbye. And our lighting has drastically changed. So sorry if this is not centered, but we're gonna power through. Seatbelt PPE. So PPE stands for personal protective equipment, and it's stuff like gloves, goggles, respirators when necessary, like gas masks and things like that. And seatbelt PPE is about the necessity to take the time to protect yourself before pursuing something with a risky outcome. So where Risk Adrenaline sort of didn't have that vibe at all, this is the more mature aspect of the same sort of situation. Then we get Alchemy Chemistry, Transmutation. This card is all about turning mercury into gold. This card is all about the process of impossible change, basically. Magma Lava is so magma is underground. Lava is what shoots up above ground. And Magma Lava is about the differences between the same thing depending on location. So this card is meant to showcase the way that where you are changes how you behave. In the earth, magma is fluid, liquid. It is important to the overall flow of the continents across the surface of the planet. And when it comes up to the surface, it is a fundamentally changing force. This sort of ties into alchemy chemistry with that changing force, because magma lava will reshape the landscape when it comes to the surface. Red green. So this card, where yellow violet was a party, this card is a forest fire. Red green is in the story that the cards tell, not necessarily when you get it in a pull. Red, green, the color cards, more so than anything else, are any other card in the deck, the color cards are exceptionally meant to be interpreted as you see fit. However, in the story the deck tells, it's a forest fire. Oil acrylic. So this card is the result of our alchemy, of our chemistry. Oil acrylic is the means to create. And as you can see here, this is actually watercolor. Shut up. Don't say anything. We get the subtitles pigments and mediums. Acetametaphenserosis. This card is the mirror card of Soma Satiate. So where Soma Satiate honestly passes less judgment in its outcome, Soma Satiate is simply the option to partake in it. Acetametaphenserosis is what happens when you overindulge in substances meant to take the pain away. Acetametaphenserosis is about the bodily consequences of trauma and difficulty, and the ways in which pain has a physical effect on us, even if we try to mitigate it as well as we can. I guess really neither of them pass judgment inherently. They ask for you to pass judgment on yourself. They ask for you to assess your own situation and see which way you're leaning. Bed couch. This is about the necessity of rest in whatever form it may take. This may be a temporary rest, this may be a more long-term rest, this may be a permanent rest, but somewhere there is the necessity for you to get access to a bed or a couch, and you need to choose which, because be honest about your needs. If you need a bed, do not lie and get on the do not lie and get on the couch. Go to the bed. Stump corpse, you're dead now. You are a stump or a corpse. However, as we see here, new life can grow in the body that you leave behind. Your corpse is not nothing. You leave a mark. And then we get attendance absence. This card is about the fact that time passes whether you're there or not, and you might as well show up if you've got the capability to. And then finally, history is written by the victor, history is written by the writer. And this one has the subtitle of Past Perception. And this card speaks to the ways in which legacy shapes the world itself. Anthropology, sociology, these are studies of culture over time, and culture is nothing but the memory of humans written in dirt. So that's mixed metaphor, mixed media. And like I said, it's poker size. It's on linen cardstock. It's got gilded copper edges. It's a good little guy. I have not figured out pricing yet. I'm trying to keep it as low as possible while still turning some kind of profit. I mean, like, I made art. I put a lot of hours into this. I'm not looking to make money off this YouTube channel, but I certainly am looking to make money off of my own art. I'm not going to lie about that. Let's be real here. But yeah, this I would love to share with the world, and I would love it if the world cared to have it shared with them. But whether the world cares or not, it's here. I made it. I did it. And that cannot be taken away, and that's just so fucking cool. So I'm like super excited to have finished this project, to have accomplished this goal, and to have these physical copies of this deck that I can use. I've already used them a couple of times in my practice, and I find them to be incredibly powerful for me personally. I can make absolutely zero claims that anyone else will have that same interaction with this deck, but obviously I did a lot of work to bring this deck into existence, so it makes sense that it would move me. So yeah, thank you so much for watching me talk about something that you cannot have in your hands yet. I've probably been talking for an embarrassing amount of time about my own intention and artwork, but I greatly appreciate your eyeballs. So thank you for sharing them, or your ear holes. If your eyeballs have not been present or cannot be present, your ear holes mean a lot to me as well. So thank you for your orifices. Have a great day. Mwah. I love you. Bye.